Welcome back everybody, this is Tyler Weeb from Pro Physique. In today's video, we're going to talk about how many calories do you need to drop to lose body fat. Alright, welcome back everybody. I hope you are all doing well and having a fantastic summer so far. So today, wanted to talk a little bit about manipulations of calories during a dieting phase. What do we need to do to help create that caloric deficit to ensure that we are dropping body fat but still eating as many calories as possible? I know I've talked about in previous videos where we always want to be dieting on as many calories as possible and on as little cardio as possible. Now, depending on what phase you're in and what you're doing, whether you're in prep or you are just a lifestyle client, those two things are going to look a lot differently. Typically, people in prep are willing to go just a little bit further and do need to go a bit further to get to those sub 10% or very lean stages of body fat. We are talking about potentially 90 minutes of cardio 4 or 5 times a week. It does depend on the person, and so things are going to look a bit differently. But what kind of manipulations should we be making for when we start a dieting phase? Well, like I said, we kind of want to find that minimum amount. So yes, I know that it says you need to create a 500 calorie deficit each day to drop body fat, right? Because 1 pound of body fat equals 500 calories. The problem is with that is that you can quickly run out of calories. If you are dropping, let's say 500 calories a day, that is going to be, math is hard, I don't know, whatever, 60 grams of carbs, and let's say whatever, 10 grams of fat, roughly maybe gonna be right and around there. It's probably actually a little bit more. And so you can see that, hey, like let's say we're starting our dieting phase at 250 grams of carbs, and if we go through that for that 500 calories, well, we're already under 200 grams of carbs. So we probably don't really necessarily need to go to that extreme right away. We typically want to find that minimum that we can get things moving. And so typically what I will do for that very first cut is I'll go about 40 grams of carbs, because carbs are definitely the easiest to manipulate and probably going to be always the highest macronutrient in most people's diets. And so that's going to be the easiest one to kind of go up and down with. And so typically for that first cut, we'll go 40 grams of carbs, and then I'll typically go 5 grams of fat. Those aren't going to be super high, and we do want to watch how low fat gets, right? We don't really necessarily want to go below 45 grams of fat every day. The only exception would be maybe you're just at the tail end of prep and you just have to get that last little bit of fat off, and you need to push it, a little bit. Now, you have a week or two maybe that you're under that 40-45, but it's going to be pretty rare because you do start to run into some health issues if you have chronically low fat. So that's always going to be the first cut. So, that's roughly going to be about, 200 calories right in there. Again, my math's probably off a little bit, but I'm just kind of going off the top of my head there. So 200 calorie drop, boom, right there. Now, I know this was about calories, but then I just kind of want to talk about a little bit about cardio. And so to kind of make up maybe that extra 300 calories that we need, you're going to add in a little bit of cardio to help create that deficit. So you're going to use both to help manipulate yourself into a deficit. And so boom, 40 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat, we're down. And then we go from there. We see what happens. Now, everyone is a little bit different for the most part though, and I find this for myself as well, is that my body is always resistant to the very first cut of macros. I typically never really see any weight loss that first time that we cut. Sometimes, the body is just so used to, being at a certain point in that reverse diet where all of a sudden we cut calories, and it's going to take a little bit of pushing to get past that part. It's called the whoosh effect, and typically it's just kind of the fat cells kind of filling up, and then it drops all of a sudden when we've created that caloric deficit. The body's almost kind of like it's fighting you a little bit. It's like, no, I'm not really ready for this. But then you kind of push it a little bit, and it just whoosh, all the fat kind of drops out of the cell, and we start to see some movement on the scale. And then from there, typically what I will do is I'll roughly go 30 grams of carbs and again 5 grams of fat. Now, Again, that's average. That's not every single person. Sometimes that does change, and sometimes I'm a little more aggressive with cardio, maybe a little more aggressive with food. Sometimes I'll ask the client, hey, like, which would you prefer? Like, would you rather have less food, or would you rather have more cardio to keep things moving along here? But at the end of the day, we want to always do the most, the kind of the minimum, again, to a certain point. Sometimes you just have to push a person to a certain point. But for the most part, we want to do the minimum so that we can see results. And so if we are seeing results and seeing that scale move and we're seeing body composition changes, well, we're not going to make any changes because we're in that caloric deficit. And then as soon as we start to see that plateau, all right, now we have to create that caloric deficit again. So let's go 30 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat. But you can see how we have to be much more aggressive with our diet than we do our reverse. With the reverse, it's 10 grams of carbs, 2 grams of fat, maybe 20 grams of carbs. It's definitely not going to be a lot. Whereas, with the diet, that metabolism is always going to be adapting. Some people are a little bit faster than others. Some people, they can go, a month without touching, calories or cardio. I've got one client, we have barely touched anything for almost 15 weeks. We've had to do a little bit of changes, but he has steadily been dropping weight every single week without really manipulating a whole lot. Some people, I just drop, you got to drop 40 grams of carbs. We're not seeing anything. All right, now we got to push a little bit more. We just got to kind of find that point for you to where that body gets into that caloric deficit and starts seeing movement on the scale. So that's why we always also want to make sure that we are starting from a point where we do have a lot of food to take from, because it could go very quickly depending on the person. And so starting from a position of 150 grams of carbs, for the majority, I would say 99% of people, is definitely not high enough for you to probably start a long-term successful diet. If you got 10, 15, 20 pounds to lose, you are going to have a tough time starting a diet on 140, 150 grams of carbs when you're probably going to be dropped right away to about 120, 110 grams of carbs. Before you know it, second cut, we're under 100 grams of carbs and we're only 3 weeks into it. There's not a lot of people that can, handle that, lack of food. Again, everyone is different. Some people can handle less food better than others. But I tell a lot of people, I'm like, a lot of competitors, it's going to be right and around that 100 grams of carbs towards the end of a prep, not at the start of a diet. And so that's why it is very important to make sure that we're taking the time to build up your food, get your metabolism into a good spot so that when we do start dieting and we have to start going 30, 40 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat, doing this type of cardio, this much cardio, we start from a position where we have a lot to take from, because the food can go quite quickly during a dieting phase, and you could quickly find yourself without a lot of food, very hungry, maybe only 4 or 5 weeks into a diet if you haven't done the rest properly. And so make sure to spend that time reverse dieting, get your food up, and then look at that dieting phase. And then anytime you plateau, go 30 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat, see what happens. All right, nothing really happened. All right, maybe let's be a little more aggressive with my cardio next time, or maybe be a little more aggressive with my food next time. So you can play a little back and forth with those two to ensure that we are creating that caloric deficit. Just don't get too crazy. All right, guys, that is going to be everything for today. So thank you for watching. Please hit that subscribe button before you hit the exit button out of this video. Would greatly appreciate it. That way you're not missing out on any future content. Have a great day, guys.